Hi everyone, my name is Kylie. I'm from Stampers Workshop and I'm an independent Stampin Up demonstrator here in Australia. Today we're making a card using the beautifully braided photopolymer stamp set from Stampin Up. The card we're making today is actually based on a couple of cards I've shared on my blog recently. I've had a lot of feedback and asking me how I made it, and so today I'm going to show you and you'll be surprised, it's super easy. You can see my stamp's been well loved, but don't worry, it doesn't affect how it stamps. It still stamps beautifully. So take a panel of Whisper White. What I usually do is I grab a whole pack of Whisper White cardstock, cut it into quarters, and then just pull out a quarter as I need it. So that's why it's already at that shape. I can then cut it down to size if I want it smaller or add, it's just easier that way. So ink up your stamp with Versamark ink, and then stamp all over the panel however you want it. Next up, we're going to use the white embossing powder, and I managed to get this everywhere, which is why I have sort of another sheet underneath just to sort of catch it. You can see I got on my fingers and everywhere, so I've done a lot of cutting out of the cleanup of this. You don't need to watch me do that. So make sure you've got embossing powder on all of your image. A little tip is I was able to stamp and emboss all at the one time, but if you're in a particularly warm environment or something, you might find that it's easier to sort of stamp, emboss, stamp, emboss. It's up to you. To be using Pacific Point, and that's the only colour ink that we'll be using. I was demonstrating that you can actually squeeze the lid of these old style ink pads and the ink will sort of deposit in the lid. I prefer not to do that though, for many reasons. I find it easier to work with just tapping out a little bit of the ink onto an acrylic block. I can just see what I'm doing. I don't like risking putting away inky, watery ink with my ink pad. It's a personal thing. So you can do it that way if you like, or just tap it like I've done on the side of an acrylic block. Makes easy cleanup. Now you can see I squeezed out a lot of water from my Aqua Painter because I want it to be really diluted, because you can see it's quite a bright colour. Now having said that, I'm not working on watercolour paper. You can do this on watercolour paper, but the very first time I did it I couldn't find mine, so I wanted to see how it would go. And it came up really well. You just have to be mindful that it is just standard paper. It's not designed for watercolour. It won't blend and move like a watercolour paper will. Having said that, it looks great, or it will when it dries. And that's the other thing. Don't be afraid when you're painting and you're looking at it, you're going, oh no, that doesn't look great. Once it's dry, it would look good. Like there's a couple of harsh lines there, but they sort of settle. You really only have a little bit of time though before you do end up with a harsh line, so just keep that in mind. Try and keep, particularly for the background where you want it perhaps a little bit softer, just try and keep that ink moving. You can see now I'm sort of adding darker areas. I haven't used as much of the washed out, really watery ink. I'm going for a little bit of a stronger look, so I can colour in those finer areas. And now I'm coming back again. I've gone, no, I would like a little bit darker, so I'm going for a bit more of a wash in some of those spots. Keep in mind too that it will actually dry a much lighter shade. So if you're working with a light colour, sometimes you have to add quite a bit of colour because it will dry down and soften a lot. Now when I was first designing this card, I was going to go with a Pacific Point background, and as the card started to dry, I was like, no, this is a really soft look. So I decided to go for a white background. So I've got a white card base, and then I've decided to use the Pacific Point to stamp the thank you. And then I'm just running it through with one of the dies from the stitched nested labels. Nothing fancy. And see how it looks there? It just looks pretty good. Now trimming off 1.5 centimeters in total from the edges of the panel. I'm kind of doing it in bits and pieces because I kind of had it quite centered with my design. I kind of didn't want to have it lopsided if I took it all off from the one edge. So you can see like I'm taking a little bit off one side, flipping it around, Now hang on to these pieces because you'll see I'm going to use them on the inside. Well, at least one of them on the inside. I often do this when I'm creating a card, so hang on to them. I decided to add a little bit of the white twine. I don't want to overwhelm this card, but it needed a little bit extra. So I wrapped it around 3 times, fiddled with it, tie a little bow, tie a knot, whichever you like. I don't tie great knots. I've got massive fingers and often massive fingernails, but you know, do what works. Usually when I'm making a swap card or something, I end up choosing to tie twine, and then I'm like, why did I do this? But it looks so good, doesn't it? I did forget to mention that because you have put lots of water in this card, you need to put it aside to dry. You could use your heat tool. I would heat it from behind though, and I would be very careful because you don't want to remelt all that beautiful embossing and don't get your fingers on it. Okay, once it's dry, add some snail, stick it down, add your sentiment. I'm going to pop it up with some of the mini dimensionals. I love these. I just love dimensionals, full stop. And you can tell I use a ton, so I didn't make you sit through that. I kind of put them on the edges so that it will slip over the raised bit of my twine. Now I'm finishing it off with some rhinestones. I love a little bit of bling, so they have to go on. I think it would have looked okay without it, but there's something about a few rhinestones. I think they look good. I used my pick it up tool, or you could use a pair of tweezers to help apply the rhinestones. I never use my fingers because fingernails, I do it all the time. They flip, they get stuck on me. I'll find them in all sorts of places. So I use a tool to adhere them. And there you go, that's the outside of the card. Now we're going to do the inside. I'm taking one of those panels that I had pre-cut, and I'm taking 1.5 centimeters off the edges. And now I'm going to use one of those strips that I've just trimmed off, and I'm going to attach that. And it's kind of just a nice little way to add a bit of the outside to the inside. And if you don't want to write much, you could make it a bigger space. The other thing you could do is you could take that floral image and actually just stamp it in a really light colour on the inside. All that's left now is to stamp or sign your details on the back. I have a stamp with the Stampin Up copyright notice, and you're done. And that is your card. Super easy. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.